Hello and welcome back to another episode of KSP POV, where we play Kerbal Space Program in first person. In the last episode, we sent probes through past the Kármán line into space to get a little science and to prove that we can. And today we're going to do that with a Kerbal. So should be a lot of fun. So today we the goal is to get a Kerbal orbiting. We don't need much. We just need to get them out in space and get them rotated around the planet. That's going to be our only contract that we really focus on today. So let's get started. So we start off, we have no contracts, but we do have a bunch of money, and we are looking to upgrade some of our buildings soon. So just looking through, see what's being offered to me. I can only take 2 contracts at a time right now, but it's okay because only 2 contracts are really catching my attention. So I go ahead and upgrade the VAB so we don't have to worry about a part limit anymore, and that's going to help out a whole tremendous amount. So here I'm just looking at the science to see where I should kind of be focusing our efforts, what we can get next, and we go ahead and decide to grab enhanced ability so we can get those twofold. Firstly, for the side parachutes, and then secondly for a bigger heat shield, because the heat shield that we just unlocked is the appropriate size for this capsule. And these little tanks right there were from the Universal Storage mod. They're little side tanks. They're meant to hold just different resources, but luckily one of the resources they were able to hold was the stuff from the TAC life support, the fuel, the water, and the oxygen. So even though we don't have access to TAC life support modules that have those, we were still able to kind of sneak some life support in on this craft, and so that worked out well. Once again, this is the hitchhiker storage. This was the capsule that we used last time we sent a Kerbal to space in episode 2, I believe. Maybe that was episode 1. But here we are, we're just packing this thing with everything that we can. We got science equipment, we've got radiators, we've got solar panels. This thing is set to be our very first orbiter, and it's going to be a crewed orbiter. That's nice. So now what I'm dealing with here is no longer part limits, but mass limit, because the launch pad is not upgraded enough. So as you can see there in the bottom right, which I have yet to notice, our craft exceeds that amount, so we're going to have to rework that if we want to launch it. Yep. So now I'm just putting in the last of the action groups and trying to get my staging correct, and then I realize, oh, well, I have too much mass, so let's see if I can work that through, and I decided to throw on a solid rocket booster as the middle stage. You'll see that again. It's not the greatest idea that I've ever had, but here we are. Well, not really much I can say for it, but yes, I put a solid rocket booster as the middle stage. But that ends up helping out because we're no longer over our mass limit, so we can actually fly this thing. So here we are once again in the hitchhiker's cabin. It's not quite a capsule. There's a lot of things here that you can connect with, but I forgot to put a camera on. That's why we just pulled it back real fast. And I went ahead and switched the direction the cabin was facing. So there we are. But then I went ahead and forgot the pilot. Once more, having to bring it back and load it up because for some reason our pilot didn't go. And since our pilot's going to be floating in a tin can, who better to pilot it than Shepcan? Shepcan Kerman. Okay, so let's get the lights on. I'm going to go ahead and get our camera on. We don't have... This little computer screen doesn't offer us much. It's great for the target menu and a camera, and that is it. Get my altitude warning on. Get some of these side things, I don't need those just yet. These gauges tell us our altitude and our altitude pressure, thrust to weight. Those gauges that I just looked at there. There's a lot of stuff to look at in here. These right there are electricity and our oxidizer, our fuel. Go ahead and quick save up there. Our altitude, both relative and above sea level altitude. Each of those buttons down here have little functions that will give you information based on which one you click. That timer always starts at 10. I don't know why. It supposedly has a countdown method, but I couldn't figure it out. Yeah, I was just playing around with that. I couldn't figure it out. So we go ahead and kick our throttle onto full, and the stage button doesn't work. So instead we use the space bar. For some reason, our thrust limit was limited completely. So we weren't getting any actual throttle upon takeoff, so we had to fix that. It's important. I know I spent a lot of time looking at all my gauges, but it's important to spend the appropriate amount of time looking at all the gauges. Like, there's no use looking at them if you don't realize that the gauge is off. Alright, so yeah, it's just a little bit of a standard takeoff, just going straight up for now. Once we hit about 100 meters per second, which is that gauge to the left that we're looking at. Once we hit 100 meters per second, we're going to tip ourselves over. And there we go. We just tip ourselves over just slightly, just enough to start getting some horizontal momentum. I like that this nav ball shows us how dramatically we are turning. That's those little bars on the sides and the tops. When we turn, you'll notice the arrow moves to show us just how much we're turning in each direction. I actually really like this pod. I wish it was a fully controllable command pod. As we mentioned in the last episode, it is not. So I kick on the solid rocket booster, but lose control when I do so. You can see I'm spinning wildly. I barely managed to grab some control here. By that point, we're already going in the wrong direction. We've wasted most of our Delta V flying around. So I go ahead and I decide to just arm the parachute and bring this on home. This is a bit of a wash. Yep, so we're just going to be landing near the KSP. We barely made any outwards progress. I wonder if that little landing and positionary instrument changes if it's replaced with the moon if you're at a different body. So yeah, since we don't have any orbits or maneuvers set, we don't have a lot of information on that screen. But it's nice to know that we can get it if we need to. We're just going to time warp our way down. And then our parachute pulls, and as you see that docking screen lined up, and that's because we're going directly our retrograde. And before you know it, we're back on Kerbal. Shepcan was a little disappointed, but is glad to hear that he's going to be selected for the next tin can mission. Goes to see if we can get an EVA report, but of course there's nothing. And then I'm looking around. I do another set of science, which is good because we didn't have it. Now I'm looking for a rescue button, but apparently we don't have one on this craft. So we can just go ahead and recover the vessel normally. So, still not enough science to upgrade things, or to unlock things. But we went ahead and upgraded the launch pad, so now mass is not going to be as much of an issue. It's really not going to be an issue for a long time until we start launching super heavy rockets. But so now that it's not an issue, I go ahead and remove that uncontrollable middle SRB stage in favor of some heavy duty side boosters. And didn't they look glorious? Alright, so once again we're just gonna get our computer set up and hit the switches that we've been used to hitting so far. I'm not entirely sure what this FDAI guide mode is. Looks fancy. And that's the thing with IVA mode, is I've searched online for a lot of different kind of tutorials for these cans, like what does each of these buttons do, what should I be looking at in each situation, and there really isn't that kind of information available on YouTube, and I haven't seen anything elsewhere. So a lot of learning IVA pods is going to be a lot of trial and error, just testing things, see what works, and trying to figure out what each of the things do. There are some YouTube videos where people take you through, like, you know, the Alcor pod, for example. There's a video that I watched that showed me that, but they didn't have any voiceover to it, so I just kind of had to infer from what the mouse was pointing at and shaking. But it would have been nice to have someone say, this is the altitude gauge, and this will go up as your ship goes up through the atmosphere, something like that. So with this can, this is, especially since this is not its own mod, it's not anything, it's just part of the IVA. I believe the DE IVA mod, I believe that's what handles this, but I could be mistaken. But yeah, a lot of trial and error, and thus far I haven't been able to figure out what that FDAI guide does. So yeah, that little map to the right can show us our actual, like, our current position above the planet, as well as where we will land. And I think that's very cool. I wish one of the other command pods had something like that too. And because I'm still in flight and there's a lot that can still go wrong, I didn't really want to mess around with it because it said that it's connected to SAS. So I'm imagining that I press the wrong button and then suddenly I will be flipped around and aiming in different directions. So I decided not to mess with it. Maybe we'll take a day and do a simulator and just find out everything that this thing can do. So I'm lowering my throttle a little bit to keep my thrust to weight at a decent range. I'm already out of the atmosphere, but I'm only at 42 kilometers. So I gotta slow down a little bit so I don't go too high. I'm only gonna try to aim for about 100 or so. We only got a little bit of fuel left in this stage. And then we go ahead and jettison it. And it explodes a little bit. I don't know why. Yeah, we had a slight little explosion there. For some reason my camera wasn't coming back on, but I realized I just had to hit next. And that solved the problem. So now we are going to be turning ourselves sideways because we don't have any maneuver nodes yet. We still haven't unlocked or upgraded the tracking station and the mission control, so we don't have any kind of patch conics to work with. So what we're going to do is we're just going to wait until we get closer to the apoapsis and then just fire horizontally. Just eyeballing it, winging it, whatever you want to call it, flying by the seat of our pants. And that's just that's how we do in this program. So you can see the number on the left is going up, the -4, 25, 419. That's our periapsis, of course, and pretty soon it will bring us all the way into orbit. Only 5 minutes into our mission. We already got one of the contracts done. That's to put a Kerbal in orbit, or put a Kerbal in space, actually, not even orbit. Just get them to space. And then the other contract is to do some science around Kerbin. So there we go, and we transmitted it, and we got both those contracts done. So as of now, it's a mission success. That's our electric charge going down, but we still have so much. So now I'm just looking around trying to see what can be done. And the time to apoapsis goes down, and once I'm at the peak of my apoapsis, I go ahead and run the experiments. I keep whatever doesn't yield me a full result for transmitting. And here I do a fatal flaw. I pressed the button that I had set up in the action groups to land at the KSC. So now the flight computer has that as its priority, and it kills off a lot of my control that I can do. I can no longer access my SAS. I can no longer access time warp. For some reason, it's not letting me time warp. I will eventually find out a trick where I press a high time warp and I get a little bit of time warp before it realizes, hey, wait a minute, I'm not allowing you to time warp. So I sat there in real time, that distance that I just faded into, I waited quite a bit, and then I decided I needed to just do something, because I can't just wait in real time for my craft to orbit the planet and figure out when or if ever it wants to land at the KSC. So yeah, I don't recommend, when you're setting your action groups and dealing with a probe, I don't recommend using the land at KSC option. It's basically what I've learned from this little endeavor. So now we are at the apoapsis, I believe. And then, see, yep, I super fast forward, and then got all the way to the other side. I also don't have connection, and that's going to be a big problem. That's why I kept transferring, and even though I'm on the dark side of the planet, I have to just kind of act quickly. Like I said before, I have no SAS here, so I'm just manually trying to point the craft at the retrograde, and the nav ball inside the vehicle doesn't have those icons, so it's a little tricky. Yeah, my SAS just won't turn on. But we managed to fire, and our periapsis is within the atmosphere, so we will be coming back down. I went ahead and armed the parachute and activated the radiators. So hopefully our descent will be okay, but we are going to be on the other side of the planet from the KSC, so there's not going to be anything we can do. We can't control the vehicle because, like I mentioned before, it's not actually a command pod. The vehicle itself is being controlled by the probe, and the probe is dead from here on out. So thankfully we were able to armor parachutes when we did, because that's going to be the only thing that will save us. We weren't even able to jettison our lower engine either. We still have it. It's quite beautiful. Just floating in our tin can. Coming down. Can't see our actual altitude from this view. There we go. So we're 60 kilometers. Nice and peaceful part of aero braking before the heat gets us. And we're just waggling around, but thankfully our engine, our back end, is retrograde enough. We hear mission control guiding us in for our landing. And now the heating starts to come up. Those gauges down there, those 3 gauges to the left of the timer, the time control box is, those are our heat gauges. So they tell us how hot our pod is getting, as well as our heat shield, but it doesn't matter because our heat shield isn't exposed. I'm sorry, not the heat shield, the ambient temperature. I'm not exactly sure what that is all about. I know in one of our other pods we have a heat shield temperature gauge. So I decided to just turn off the lights. No real reason. I just, sometimes I like to have the lights off, but in this pod it was just a little too dark to work with. So as you can see, we are actually above the South Pole, but we are going to be landing towards the tip of one of its arms. And like I said before, there's nothing I can do here. I can't even rotate the craft to dissipate any heat. I am at the mercy of it. And if the parachute doesn't deploy when it's supposed to, we are going to have to exit our Kerbal and have them parachute their way down, which would lose us all of the science that we gained. We did transmit the science, some of the science, so that way our contract will be complete. So it'll be a mission success as long as we don't kill the Kerbal. But I'd like that science. And this is one of the first times we've done this kind of mission, and you know, it's a new IVA can that we are not used to even from our previous season. So I'm going to keep these. I mean, as you know, I'm going to keep these mostly unedited, just to kind of show the whole journey. Maybe later, once we start making things very routine, we'll fast forward through certain parts. For now, I just enjoy seeing it through from start to finish. Being the astronaut. It's Shepcan Simulator 2023. It's one of the really enjoyable parts about KSP POV is being the astronaut that goes to these places instead of just the mission controller watching the craft. So we are now at 20 kilometers, and that's about the time when the heating effects fizzle out. And we made it safely through the atmosphere. We didn't explode. So now all that's left is to parachute our way down, and hopefully our parachutes will hold even though we have all this extra weight of the lower tank and engine. I did end up rating them to pop pretty much at the last minute. So there we go. At 1.5 kilometers, they open, and then at 700 feet, they fully deploy. And we're going down slow enough that we managed to survive. We did it, everybody. Shepcan did it. And all without any true control. Just the illusion of control in his craft. That probe core is who really saved us. So yeah, look at all that science we got. We leveled up, got all these ribbons. World's first. So it was quite a journey. We did our contracts. So let's just go ahead and unlock this command pod. It also gives us better life support options. So as much as we like the tin can, the Mach 1 command pod is going to take us much farther since it's actual control. We don't need to rely on remote text signal for it. And then we also go ahead and unlock the node that gives us the service bay so we can keep our experiments a little neater. So now I'm just going to lastly look through any contracts to kind of grab for the next one. And we grabbed 2 contracts that will start a grinding mission. So in the next episode, we're going to just try to get a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of science. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please consider giving me a like, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.